Hello and welcome to In the Light, Growing Your Soul with me, Anna Isabel. And it is my great pleasure to introduce my guest today, who is Margaret Cahill, whom I have known for some time because she is the Wessex astrologer. And this is a wonderful publishing company that produces the most marvelous astrology books. And as it happens, today we are not talking about astrology. We are here to talk about her own book, which is Under the Cover of Darkness, My Journey Through Mantle Cell Lymphoma. And she's holding it up. Margaret, hello.
Hi, it's really nice to see you, to be able to have this chat. Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome. Now this book was written how many years ago?
11.
11 years ago, but I only discovered it a few months ago. And I was so moved by this book that I rang you up and I said, "You'll never believe what I've just been reading." And
Yeah. How did you come across it?
you sent it to me a very long time ago, I think when you first wrote it.
Oh, right.
It coincided with the internet radio station I was working for closing down. And so the books that I was meant to discuss at the time never got discussed. And I happened to come across a little pile of books that I had never got round to discussing, which meant I never got round to reading. And your book was amongst them. And I thought, that's Margaret's book. I think I need to read this. So that's how I came across it. But I think maybe, as we know, there's a time for everything.
Mm.
And I felt that it would be a really good opportunity to check in with you and get a sense of your experience then and your perception of things now. So, obviously, the title is pretty self explanatory, but why did you feel the need to write the book?
Well, when I was first diagnosed and furious, as most people are when they're diagnosed with cancer, um, I followed all the advice and got a journal and wrote it all down. And they said, don't read it back, just pour it out, just write it, So for about 2 or 3 days, I wrote like this. And then I did read it back, of course, because everybody does. And I thought, this is ridiculous. I don't want it. Energetically, it felt wrong for all that stuff to go into the book and then close it. And then you open it and it all pours out again. To me, it wasn't doing anything constructive. It didn't work for me. And that coincided with a very dear friend phoning and saying that he hadn't been kept up to date with the latest round of whatever was going on. And he said, I know that you're really busy and that you're going to appointments and you've got to keep up with all your family and everything. It's all right, it's fine, it's fine. And he was kind of in tears. And it really upset me. And I was telling one of my authors, Darren Gunsberg, actually, and she said, well, why don't you write a blog? And then you don't have to keep phoning, because every night there was family, there was friends, there was colleagues, everybody wanted to know, and they got upset if they were left out. So I said, well, I don't write, I publish. And she said, go on, just try it, please, for me, just try it. So I learned how to do WordPress. I set it up and started writing, and it was so cathartic. It was absolutely unbelievable, and I had never really written before, um, and it felt amazing. It was. I started to see things differently, and when I went into hospital, or in fact with anything, I would start looking for the characters and what I could say about them, with their permission in the blog. And then it grew legs, and then it went. I had quite a lot of followers at one point. So it was just an innocent remark, really, by a friend.
I totally get what you mean when you say, you write it and then you close the diary, and because that doesn't feel like a release, does it?
No.
You kind of have to. it's like blowing the seeds, isn't it? And they fly out into the world. And so I think writing and not releasing it, it maybe just didn't feel that the energy was being expressed properly. So
Mm.
that makes that, and that's such a wonderful tip as well, I guess, if people just want to share that with a friend. And the other thing that really struck me was how true it is that when people are going through things like this, there's so many people who are concerned, but it becomes quite a burden to have
Mm.
to talk about it again and again
Yeah.
and again. And you kind of feel stuck in a loop, don't you?
Yeah, and Stephen would come back from the hospital and just have people to phone all evening, and my brothers would be phoning, and friends would be phoning, and he was just exhausted. And I didn't want to talk. Neither of us wanted to talk about it more than we had to. Just repeating the same thing, and then the version got shorter and shorter, and and it was cathartic in that. I joked at the beginning that I got to share the misery with the rest of the world, which is, I got very dark humour. I discovered almost immediately that I've got a very dark sense of humour. And I said at the beginning, well, I've got to go through this, and maybe me talking about going through it will help somebody else. And certainly that was the feedback I started getting, on the comments. I mean, there were definitely people who said, why do you have to talk about it? Like, basically, why can't you just shut up? You know, really. I mean, even there were some doctors who were being treated for cancer, and they said, people don't want to hear this stuff. And I said, they do, actually, you know, because it's really powerful. And you have to let it out. And I discovered that I just wanted to go deeper and deeper and deeper into my reaction to things. And you can't do that in a simple phone call with somebody.
No, you can't. And I just there's so much about this. And I guess I feel that we all have our moments of heroism.
Mhm.
And often life requires us to be heroic more than once and in different ways. And I did feel reading your book that this was one of your heroic moments because I was struck by your courage, not just in writing about it, but just the way in which you dealt with this extraordinarily frightening situation. I was so moved so often by the courage that you had. And it's not just the courage to undergo treatments and all the things that it entails and the hospital visits and everything else, but it was just your attitude, I think, was the thing that really moved me. How did you manage? And people talk about, staying positive, and I want to make sure that
Oh.
we're not. People don't think that that's what I mean. Being positive is not about ignoring the fear and is not about ignoring the danger and pretending that it's not there. Being positive is something else. So I tell us about this for you.
Well, I very quickly discovered that I didn't have any choice. Um, People used to say, how do you do this? And I used to say, well, I wake up every morning, and if I've got an appointment at the hospital, I have to go to it. So you can't just say, no, I'm not playing that. Can I have another life? And one thing that did happen is I've had an interest in Buddhism for a very long time. And as comes out in the book, I started reading Thich Nhat Hanh's books, and the very first one of his that I got, and I used to carry around with me, was Fear. A beautiful, really little book, really, really nice. And he says, as he does in all his books, the only thing you've got control over is this particular moment. you what's gone has gone. You don't know what's coming. All you can do is be in the moment. And I think learning to do that really helped me to deal with all the dark nights of the soul, which is that's another beautiful book. Um, I learned that the only thing I could control was my attitude, which I think is that the Gnostics, I think. And everything else is almost irrelevant because I could control if I was upset or if I thought something was funny or however I approached the treatment and the depression that comes with it. So that was it, living in the moment. And so I would consider myself a Buddhist now because of that, because it just made sense to me.
And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation with you for this channel, because it's that, it's exactly that, the spiritual approach that you took to help deal with this tremendous thing that happened to your body. And I think that's possibly what moved me so much.
Oh, thank you. I guess it was my way of dealing with it. I just I wanted to do the best I could for myself. It's not in my nature to just sort of go down without a fight. And I thought, I'm going to find out everything I can to support myself and to help myself. And I think the strength in that, because you could see people on the ward every morning who, and this isn't criticism of them, it's just an observation, but people would get out of their bed, stay in their dressing gown, and they'd sit with their noses this far away from the free television screen because some lovely person had given a lot of money to the hospital so that the cancer ward patients could watch television. They would stay there watching television all day, and then they would get back into bed at 6:30 or something. And I saw them do this, and I thought, that's not good for you. I mean, I'm naturally kind of, I run, jump around a lot anyway. But I didn't see the point of doing that. I thought I can't do that. That's not my way. So when I went into isolation, I was in isolation for 23 days after the stem cell transplant. And so you have like a bathroom, and you've got, I suppose it's quite like a hotel room in a way, size wise. So I had this table, and my laptop was with me because I was working as well while I was in there. I was working remotely. And I made sure that every morning before ward rounds, I'd get up, have a shower, be dressed. And then when they'd come in, I'd sort of say, "Oh, come into my office, I've made you an appointment," and all this kind of stuff, which they thought was hilarious. They hadn't quite come across that attitude before. But I think it helped keep me sane, and it pushed me to explore my depths.
I know that you also had a pink companion with you.
Yeah,
Where is she?
you see her.
Can you
She still features. This is Vanilla.
tell us about the role that she played?
Well, that was really quite strange. I got her at a local garden centre actually before I was ill. And they sell all these beautiful things, and I would quite often get things. And now, anyway, so I walked past her one day. She's sitting on the shelf, just the one, and it does actually say Fenella on her label. I don't think you can see it, but it does say Fenella on her label. It wasn't my idea. And she was sitting, on the thing, and I just looked at those eyes, and I said, "I'm having her." So when I went in, I got it. I think after about the first couple of days, I felt I was being dehumanized, and I needed to take my own things in. So we got like pink duvet covers, and she started coming in with me. And Judy Hall, who was a massive strength, she would regularly come in and see me and bring chunks of crystal. She brought this chunk of green calcite, it's about this big, to help with with the sickness. And so Fenella used to sit in front of that. So the pink and the green used to look really good, and it just became this thing. And I remember one day when they were doing ward rounds, and I'd been in for quite a long time. It was quite long cycles I'd have. And she was sitting on my bedside cabinet, and one of the consultants said, "Well, look, if you think about it this way," and he picked up vanilla, and there was like this collective intake of breath from all the other staff. I said, "Step away from the bed," and we just all laughed. So she became a thing. So she still has pride of place in the office.
Well, and so so she should, because she was there through it all, and I think that's so. If I'm thinking about how you the how you drew strength, you focused on the moment, which is really important for us when at any point in life, particularly when we're feeling very anxious and when we're dealing with things that are not within our power to change. So being in that moment. And the other thing you did was you just took the attitude that this was a temporary situation, and as much as possible to keep as much of your life as you could. And then also to the point where you refused to allow yourself to just be a patient,
Mm.
and you made an effort to have your personal things around you just to remember who you are. And the reason that so impressed me from as a therapist is because that's exactly what I would be recommending people do. Because we wouldn't, it's very easy for us to start thinking that we are the illness or that the illness is us.
Oh, yeah. That was another thing. I never used to talk about my cancer. I would just talk about cancer or the cancer. I would, 'cause when I started talking about all this and people were commenting, they came up with lots of ideas like imagining the chemo going in and all these little soldiers having a battle, and owning the cells and sending them on their way, and lots of different, techniques. And I thought, I can't do that. I'm not going to become personally involved. This is something in my body. I want it gone. I'm not forming a relationship with it, loving it, hating it, anything. I just want it gone. And for me, that was really important. I think you can go. I think it's a fine line actually, but it's not denial because I knew that I was very ill, but not engaging with it, not sort of like my cancer. Which cancer have you got? Oh, I've got this one. I wasn't like that. No.
Yeah, I felt that that was, very important because you made absolutely sure that there was a distinction. There was Margaret and there was the illness, and that you and the illness were not the same thing. And I see that with clients who are suffering from depression or any kind of chronic discomfort, if I could put it like that, or disease, where they begin to think that that is who they are.
Mm.
And and I work really hard to get them to separate from that and see that no, this is a condition, it is not an identity. And you
Mm.
just did that very naturally, which I thought was really very important. So this is looking back now. What did you do that you felt helped you both physically and emotionally?
Physically, I researched what I could do to help myself. One of the biggest things with chemotherapy, of course, is the ulcers. And I was determined that I would do my utmost not to get ulcers. And um, when I first went in for treatment, I wasn't sure which vitamins or anything to take. And Swamiji, who's a very dear friend of mine, she's like my surrogate mother. She said, wait till you come out and see what your body's telling you. And I think in the book, I said I came out and my body was screaming. And she said, right, let's take it bit by bit, which bit's going to help most. And I started taking a vitamin A drop and a vitamin D3 drop every day. And I didn't get a single ulcer, even with a stem cell transplant. And when I was in isolation, you also get a little fridge. And Stephen used to bring in juices for me. We looked up which juices would be best. So he would do the juicing and bring it in, bless him. I'd have like my drops all lined up as well. Um, and when I started having the chemo that you have when you just before stem cell transplant is absolutely brutal. It really is. They give you something called melphalan, which destroys every cell in your body, and then they put the stem cells back into your body, and then there's 3 days during which the new stem cells should engraft. So it's all a very tense time, and if you that was the sickest I've ever felt, the worst. I just didn't move for 2 days. And then when I started coming out of it, and it was, we were all happy because the engraftment was happening. And they came in and said, if you want to have a morphine pump, you can have it for the pain. And I said, well, what pain? And they said, well, for your mouth. And I said, I haven't got any ulcers. And at one point, there's 3 of them like investigating my mouth. And I honestly haven't got any ulcers. And they were really impressed, and they wanted to be able to suggest it to people.
Brilliant. And again, this is, I think there's so many things that impressed me. There's what we've already discussed, but this is the matter of self-empowerment as well, is to say, okay, there's an element of surrender always when we have circumstances that we can't change. And you said it, you just have to face it. So
Mm.
that's a level of acceptance to say, okay, well, I have no choice here. I'm just going to have to face this. But then beyond that is the question, well, what can I do? What is within my power? Because so often in situations like this, it's the feeling of disempowerment that actually really can be quite devastating. And there's been so many studies that show that when people have hope, they do better. They respond better to treatments.
Yeah.
And so what gives us hope is often a sense of empowerment. And so we have that living in the moment to deal with the fear. Here we have you holding on to your personal self, your identity, and then the next thing here is the empowerment, which is so important. So again, this is years on. How do you feel that experience changed you?
Oh, it let the writing genie out of the bottle. That was, I loved it. I deal with words anyway because I publish, but I publish other authors, but that was different. I was able to write from so many different perspectives, and I just loved it. And all of the characters in the book, I got permission from all of them. So they knew that they were in the book. And if they didn't want to be, I just made them into someone else and changed them a bit so nobody would recognize them. And I used to love, it was almost like social commentary, like the crazy thing of being given oh, the stuff for the scan, which made me radioactive, and then the scanner not working, and then me being told to drive to another hospital, but I mustn't talk to anybody on the way. The way out happened to be through the maternity ward. It's just it just got absolutely ridiculous. So instead of letting it get me down, I'd think, oh, I can write about this. This is going to be an absolute scream. And so that's what I mean about the dark humor is I just found a way to deal with it and to recount it for people so that if they were going through it too, they might laugh and they might find that it's not quite so scary.
That's again another really valuable point because what you're saying is that sometimes it's worth stepping outside of yourself and being an observer.
Yeah.
When I read when I read that account of what happens to you, perhaps it ought to, you ought to make the story a little bit more clear here, for the audience. Explain exactly what happened, how you got into this somewhat absurd situation.
Well, I had to have a CAT scan. I think it was a CAT scan, for which they inject radioactive liquid into you. And once they've injected the liquid, you have to sit in this kind of box thing. It's like a little room, but it's not a friendly little room. Um, and and I'd been there for ages. There were three of us in different rooms, and I've been there for absolutely ages, thinking, "Oh, I'm really getting a bit fed up with this now." And the nurse came in, and she kind of opened the door, and she went, "The scanner's not working." And I said, "What do you mean it's not working?" She said, "The engineer's here. I'll come back." So another half an hour went by, and then she came back and said, "It's not working. It really isn't going to be working today." And I said, so I kind of looked at myself and went, "Well, so what do I do now? You know, I'm radioactive. Like, so what happens now? Surely you've got plan B. Like, can I go to another one?" And she said that there was another scanner at Southampton, only it was fully booked, and so they couldn't, give me a slot. And I said, "Well, look, there's three of us here. Surely this is a little bit important because we're all radioactive. So where am I going to go?" And I'm not going through this again. I did get stroppy from time to time, have to say that. Um, anyway, so she managed to get us all bookings at Southampton and said, "Right, so when you leave this hospital, you've got to go the fastest route possible, just out of here to your car, to Southampton, go straight to the scanning room. Don't stop and talk to people. Don't stop off for a coffee, you know." So, so I had to go through the maternity unit to get through out, and I'm trying to like slide along, the walls like this, sort of alternately laughing and crying, thinking this is absolutely ridiculous. Got into the car, and this was before I had sat nav. So I followed the signs to Southampton Hospital and managed to kind of go a bit wrong. So I ended up in the back streets of Southampton, and the only person I could see was a postman across the across the road. So I wound down my window and said, "Can you just tell me how to get to this unit in Southampton Hospital?" And he started walking across the road to me. I said, "No, no, no, do not come close. You must not come close." And he looked at me like I was an absolute nutter. And I said, "No, I'm radioactive, please. I'm on my way to have a scan." That song "Radioactive" was going through my, anyway. So I got to the scanning unit, and I think I'd been at the hospital, Bournemouth Hospital. I started out at 9 o'clock. So I got to the one at Southampton about 1 o'clock, had no food because you weren't allowed to eat when you had the scan. So eventually we got to, I think we turned up almost like one, two, three, these other people with me, got into the unit, and they're like, the doors are open and like, just go through. And we managed to get scanned, and it was hilarious.
Yeah, and that is exactly the kind of situation for which a sense of humor is vital, and that sense of observation. And it did make me smile when you said, the postman, because I've always felt that if I need directions and I see a postman, there's no better person to ask.
Exactly, I know.
So divine providence there. Wow. Do you have you kept Okay, so let me rephrase this question. What is it I'm actually asking? So what I'm actually asking is this. Going through this experience, this illness, led you to develop a certain way of being in the moment, detaching yourself when things are a bit hairy so that you could laugh at them, amongst other strategies. Is that something that stayed with you and has developed into life skills?
Yes, I think it has. It's made me braver. It's made me braver in having difficult conversations with people. I have lost both my parents, and so I have the history of dealing with grief. And the hardest thing is talking to people who have either just lost somebody, or then once I had lymphoma, talking to people who had just been diagnosed with cancer. Because the worst thing that happens is that people don't know what to say to you. And a number of people who, when we talked afterwards, said, like when I was in remission, said, I really wanted to reach out and talk to you, but I didn't know what to say.
That's a huge one, isn't it? I hear that a lot from clients that people avoid them because they don't know well, obviously it's because they don't know what to say.
Mm. And they think you don't want to talk about it. And in fact, you do. Well, I mean, I did. I don't. I know some people don't because of the comments I got on the blog from. I've got a really horrible review on Amazon actually from this guy who said, "I don't know why this book ever got published." Like, why do you have to talk about it?
Well, why did he have to read it?
Exactly. Yeah, you don't
Expect
get a chance to reply, do you, on Amazon? That's the trouble.
Why would you read a book that you are not interested in? So I think that's very interesting, but I like that what you said about being braver. And the thing you're braver about is the ability to talk about things
Mm.
which are the taboos of our time.
Yeah, I think I'm very much. I am. I hesitate to say this. I think in some ways I'm stronger and clearer in what I want, but there's an awful long way to go. I think it kind of opened the door to me in analysing my thoughts, in being able to write. And so I did write one fiction book after this, just as a change of scenery. But I'm not like that. I like to write about the things that people find difficult, that I find difficult. So I think it's opened a kind of a portal, and I would like to write more along those kind of lines, because for me it's self-investigation, and if you're investigating as deeply as you can, then I think you're coming from a position of strength because you're not frightened to look. It is scary, but you know,
There is something about writing because by its very nature, it's very reflective, that it helps us to clarify feeling and it
mm,
helps us to clarify thought, but feeling as well. Um, I my writing is just small excerpts at the moment on Substack, whether it's of an astrological nature or whether it's about moments in time with Teddy, my dog, or a particular plant which I've been enjoying in one way or another. It's like it's like I'm taking a magnifying glass to that moment or that experience and really exploring it. And I find it incredibly, I don't want to say therapeutic, but illuminating.
I think it is therapeutic in a way though, because what I prefer with writing than being interviewed is that with writing you can write the sentence and then you think, oh, that's not quite right. It doesn't quite balance. It hasn't got the right kind of rhythm to it, and there needs to be, and you can tweak it and play with it until you're really happy with it. And it's like a muscle, isn't it? And the more you do it, the more familiar you become with the actual art of writing. And I think that's, just keep at it, just keep going. It's
Yeah,
so satisfying.
yeah, and that's obviously very, very valuable. And I do think it is therapeutic. You're right. Um, but I think that where I'm looking at it is it's that reflective quality of writing as well as anything else, because It's in times when we are feeling very, very upset about something and emotional. It is very therapeutic. Um,
Mm.
but there's the other side, which just doing it as an exploration as well, which is also very beautiful. And on both counts, your book is something to be loved, and perhaps you can show it to us again.
Thank you. You see it?
I can indeed, and it is called Under the Cover of Darkness, and I will be putting a link to it in the description box. Margaret, thank you for this wonderful book, and thank you for your time today.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you all for watching. Until next time, do remember to check the description box for links to Margaret's book, but also my Substack. Until next time, goodbye.